When Chelsea Markham sat down in the car with her mother, she started crying uncontrollably. Her mother asked her what was wrong. She said that the doctor had put his fingers inside her. Her mother, who had been sitting in the examination room, said that she didn't see anything, to which Chelsea replied, "Mom, he put his fingers in me. He hurt me."
And she said, "Mom, he put his fingers in me, and they weren't gloved." And I said, "Chelsea, I was right there in the room." And she goes, "You couldn't see what was going on, Mom." And she said, "He hurt me."
Chelsea Markham was one of 500 girls whose life was ruined by routine medical treatments given by Dr. Larry Nassar.
She took her own life because she couldn't deal with the pain anymore. It'll be 10 years in March that I lost my baby. She was 23 years old. She would have been 33 now.
How could such a huge abuse of power go unnoticed? We are here to uncover the truth. Larry Nassar, born in August of 1963, was always interested in gymnastics, especially the girls who performed them. After graduating, he decided to pursue kinesiology, the study of movement, and enrolled at the University of Michigan. The USA Gymnastics national team hired Nassar as an athletic trainer in 1986. At this point, Larry had no medical knowledge. He just showed up to volunteer himself as an athletic trainer because he loved to treat women in leotards.
He was not yet a doctor, no. He was a volunteer athletic trainer. He walked into the gym and said, "I want to volunteer. It's going to look good on my medical school applications." But something that I find very interesting is Larry Nassar received a varsity letter as a high school student for women's gymnastics.
His fetish for young girls continued when he was a medical coordinator for USA Gymnastics in 1996. He was also present as a doctor on the 2011 Visa Championships, where he was treating Ali Raisman and other athletes. His mask of professionalism would soon wear off as reports of abuse started surfacing in 2005, and Nassar was fired from the USA Gymnastics. I don't get it. Why didn't she say something if she was feeling violated in any way, shape, or form? There was no communication.
I don't get it. Why didn't she say something if she was feeling violated in any way, shape, and form? There was no communication.
Okay.
This is how Larry Nassar described his interaction with his patients when he was investigated after a complaint of abuse. But that was not the end of the child rapist's career. He kept working as a doctor at Twister's Gymnastics Club and Michigan State University until Indy Star, the morning newspaper, began an investigation into the underbelly of the gymnastics world. Meanwhile, the Indy Star investigative journalist Marisa Kwiatkowski were investigating sexual abuse perpetuated by coaches to young gymnasts in USA Gymnastics. The article, Out of Balance, revealed that the gymnasts who tried to report these coaches would be silenced. The USA Gymnastics did not do anything about these allegations, and the abusive coaches would simply change jobs from one gym to another. These coaches continued to abuse and protect other abusers throughout the states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, California, Rhode Island, Indiana, and elsewhere. Maggie Haney was suspended for 8 years after gymnasts reported that she physically and verbally abused them while training. You can see for yourself how Maggie failed to console Riley McCusker after a fall. The investigative journalist Marisa Kwiatkowski and her colleagues Mark Alicia and Tim Evans were investigating USA Gymnastics ignoring or hiding the sexual abuse by gymnastics coaches by switching their locations. Mark Alicia received a voice message from a young gymnast, Jessica Howard, regarding abuse carried out by a doctor.
Hi, Mr. Alicia. My name is Jessica Howard. I just wanted to call you as a follow-up to your story. I'm very nervous about talking to you about it, but I think it would help bring justice to a lot of the people who have been affected by USA Gymnastics and their policies. Thank you. Bye.
When Mark followed up on the story, he realized that the USA Gymnastics was not only protecting coaches, but doctors as well.
We found multiple examples of situations in which USA Gymnastics had received allegations, did not report them, and then other children were abused.
When Rachel Den Hollander read the article, she sent an email to the Indy Star investigative team saying that she was not abused by a coach but by Dr. Larry Nassar. She said that he molested her when he was supposed to give her medical treatment for her back.
He asked to do myofascial release, which I knew was a legitimate physical therapy technique, and he did that with his right hand externally. He did legitimate therapy, and with his left, he sexually assaulted me under the towel.
When Marisa Kwiatkowski read the email, she was sure that it was something to consider. She and her team started digging and found evidence of assault in Dr. Larry Nassar's medical practice. The Sunday school teacher and renowned doctor was not who he seemed to be, and Marisa told the world exactly who he was.
We researched medical treatments to determine whether what he'd done was a legitimate procedure, and if it was, whether he'd followed proper protocol. Our research indicated that he had not.
As more women came forward with reports against Larry Nassar, Marisa and her team published another article on the 25th of September 2016. They found out that the sexual abuse against young gymnasts had been taking place for over a decade, from 1996 to 2014. Even then, the MSU spokesman, Jason Cody, denied that the abuse was happening at the university. I am not aware of any other allegations or investigations into medical personnel at the clinic or any other MSU clinic. Dr. Larry Nassar has been working as a medical professional advising young girls regarding their health and fitness for over a decade.
Pop goes the weasel. So this little ball.
He was kind. He was funny. He made them laugh.
I can articulate it, go boom, chugga, boom, chugga, boom, chuck, chuck. That's what I do when I articulate, okay? And then my thrust.
He snuck them snacks and gave them food, and he engendered trust in all these women.
It was hard for people to believe that there was a monster hiding underneath the mask of the kind doctor. Larry had also been working as a Sunday school teacher and was also raising funds for a charity. Who would believe that such a saintly man was a child rapist?
You broke and shattered a lot of girls. You manipulated us to trust you because you're a doctor, and doctors do no wrong, only heal.
He betrayed my trust, took advantage of my youth, and sexually abused me hundreds of times.
Marisa and her team had their work cut out for them. They investigated each medical practice and compared it with Nassar's technique. His medical procedures were not the standard practice. It was simply molestation. Nassar admitted the fact that he touched women's private parts, but it was part of his process. This was admitted during an interrogation done in the year 2014.
Nassar acknowledged that he touches women in intimate places, sometimes penetrating them, but tried to argue that it's part of an understood medical procedure.
If you don't have patient confidence and patient trust, you would have been having my in here how many times?
Right.
Okay, especially when I'm doing this on 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, okay, with their parents there. But I'm obviously doing a doggone good job explaining things.
After the first article was published against Nassar, the police began investigating his home and his office. They found hard drives full of child pornography in his trash.
If garbage pickup hadn't been later the day law enforcement executed a search warrant at Nassar's home and found at least 37,000 images of child pornography on hard drives in his trash.
Marisa Kwiatkowski didn't stop until she found the truth. The police finally had enough evidence and arrested Dr. Larry Nassar on November 22, 2016. Following his arrest, Marisa published her third and final article on Larry Nassar, titled "Ex-USA Gymnastics Doctor's Charges Are the Tip of the Iceberg." Dr. Larry Nassar had sexually abused more than 500 girls. When Nassar's lawyer said that there had been no penetration in his medical practice, many women woke up to their abuse. Since these women had only been 12 to 15 years old when the abuse occurred, they did not realize the extent of Nassar's evil.
I am Jessica Tomashow, also known as Victim A. I was sexually assaulted by Larry Nassar when I was 9 and 12 years old.
Rachel Den Hollander was the first survivor who agreed to publicly accuse Nassar of molestation. The former gymnast, who had gone on to become a lawyer, was no longer scared. She was a grown woman and was ready to take on the legal battle.
How much is a little girl worth? How much is a young woman worth? Larry is a hardened and determined sexual predator. I know this firsthand. At age 15, when I suffered from chronic back pain, Larry sexually assaulted me repeatedly under the guise of medical treatment for nearly a year. He did this with my own mother in the room, carefully and perfectly obstructing her view so that she would not know what he was doing.
Rachel was brave enough to reveal her name and the story of her abuse. Her strength allowed other women to speak up. The most alarming thing about Nassar's case was that he would abuse little girls, even when their parents were in the room. He had no shame whatsoever.
His ability to gain my trust and the trust of my parents, his grooming and carefully calculated, brazen sexual assault was the result of deliberate, premeditated, intentional, and mythological patterns of abuse, patterns that were rehearsed long before I walked through Larry's exam room door, and which continued to be perpetrated, I believe, on a daily basis for 16 more years until I filed the police report.
This fact allowed Nassar to avoid being charged with sexual assault, as he could say, "I did everything with the parents in the room." Who could argue with that? Rachel could. She had studied law, and she used it for the sole purpose of taking her attacker down. She used the full strength of her knowledge and argumentative power to put Nassar in prison for the rest of his life. You might be wondering, how could Nassar get away with sexual abuse in the presence of the patient's parents? Dr. Larry Nassar would use the term intravaginal adjustment to justify penetrating the young girls. Sarah Klein explains how Larry would use professional jargon to abuse her when she was only 8 years old.
Larry was very great at giving technical explanations, and he would speak the entire time he was treating you. So he would say, I'm going to loosen this ligament, and now I'm going to massage this muscle and release this. And so it all, sounded really legitimate, and he used medical terms, and to an 8-year-old,
Certain medical procedures require pelvic floor adjustments. This physical method relaxes the muscles of the pelvic floor to strengthen the core. However, a pelvic adjustment is always done while wearing gloves, and the doctor must get a patient's consent before using any invasive technique. Nassar, on the other hand, did not feel the need to ask for consent. He did not wear any gloves and performed these so-called intravaginal adjustments for inquiries that were totally unrelated to the pelvic floor. Chelsea Markham, a victim who took her own life, explained exactly what Nassar did to her own daughter and how it changed her life forever.
And I said, Chelsea, tell me what's wrong. And she said, Mom, he put his fingers in me and they weren't gloved. And I said, Chelsea, I was right there in the room. And she goes, you couldn't see what was going on, Mom. And she said, he hurt me.
He would move his hands across the girl's breasts and sensually hold them. He had the audacity to use his fingers to penetrate the vagina and the anus. When a girl and her mother visited him for treatment, they could see Nassar having an erection. Even with such a stark display of arousal, Nassar continued to lie to save his skin.
I shouldn't be getting an erection during an exam.
Right. Well, this is why I'm talking to you about this, because this young girl and her mother both observed this on more than one occasion during treatment.
If there was arousal, it's I mean, like, it would be because of whatever, I don't know, but I'm not trying to,
I don't know. I don't know.
When you're a guy, sometimes you get an erection.
Nassar did not leave any place or time where he didn't molest a patient in his care. Whether it was his apartment, his office at Michigan State University, or even a small room at the back of an Olympic venue, Nassar would use the opportunity to abuse the young athletes. Reports suggest that each victim was estimated to be abused 800 times by Nassar. Kaylee Lawrence, who was traumatized by these so-called treatments, lashed out at Larry's methods as she stood in front of the court. So Larry, how are you feeling right now?
So Larry, I ask you, how are you feeling right now?
If you were to meet Larry Nassar before knowing any of the details of this case, you would think that he was the gentlest person on earth. When the coaches at USA Gymnastics or the University of Michigan were harsh with girls, he would offer a kind word, a hug, or even candy. Sarah Klein explained that he was so kind and understanding towards the parents that they thought that he was an excellent human being.
I'll also mention Larry was a lovely human being. I describe him to be like a Labrador puppy, the smiliest, kindest, always had a hug, always had something kind to say. He was the good cop to our coach's bad cop. And so he was very loved, and he also groomed our parents.
Nassar not only manipulated children, but also groomed the parents. He would be extra sweet to the parents and tried to explain everything in detail. The parents listened when he told them that he would release a muscle. It was as if Nassar's charm hypnotized the parents and did not notice what was happening with their children right before their eyes. Maddie Larson explained exactly how it felt.
Your kindness was simply a ploy to molest me every chance you got. I can't even put into words how much I hate you.
No other sexual assault case in history has as many survivors as Larry Nassar's case. The disgraced doctor had abused hundreds of women, out of which a few brave ones stood up for themselves. The two-time Olympian Ali Raisman confronted Nassar while looking him straight in the eye. Now, Larry, it's your turn to listen to me. This girl standing on the witness stand was not scared. She was a brave woman who had decided to take fate into her own hands. Simone Biles is a force of nature when it comes to gymnastics. However, the Olympic gold medalist broke down in tears when making an impact statement at Nassar's hearing. She said that organizations are made to protect athletes, but they failed to do their job.
I don't want another young gymnast, Olympic athlete, or any individual to experience the horror that I and hundreds of others have endured before, during, and continuing to this day in the week.
She continued to reveal that the FBI had never contacted her. She said that the organizations responsible for delaying Larry Nassar's arrest do not face the scrutiny they deserve.
Neither USAG nor USOPC have ever been made the subject of the same level of scrutiny. These are the entities entrusted with the protection of our sport and our athletes, and yet it feels like questions of responsibility and organizational failures remain unanswered. As you pursue the answers to those questions, I ask that your work be guided by the same question that Rachel Denhollander and many others have asked: how much is a little girl worth?
Michaela did not mince her words when it came to her impact statement. She immediately started her speech by saying that Larry was a pedophile. She said that when she had told the FBI about Larry Nassar in 2015, they didn't do anything about it.
I then told the FBI about Tokyo, the day he gave me a sleeping pill. That evening, I was naked, completely alone, with him on top of me, molesting me for hours. I told them I thought I was going to die that night because there was no way that he would let me go. But he did, and there was just dead silence.
She said that they lied and chose to protect a serial child molester. Michaela had replied clearly to all the questions asked by the FBI officer.
I told them how he molested me right before I won my team gold medal, how he gave me presents, bought me caramel macchiatos and bread when I was hungry. I even sent them screenshots of Nassar's last text to me, which was, "Michaela, I love how you see the world with rose-colored glasses. I hope you continue to do so."
Cameron Moore, who was carrying a child at the time of the court hearing, directly addressed Larry Nassar. She said that she didn't want her unborn child to be in the same room as a child molester.
Initially, I wasn't going to come here and say anything to you. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't want this child I'm carrying to be in the same room as a child molester.
Cameron used to get injured a lot during her gymnastics career, but every time she was injured, Dr. Larry Nassar was there to treat her. Larry took his time to gain Cameron's trust and developed a close relationship with her. When Cameron turned 12, Larry decided to give her his special treatment, asking Cameron to take off her leotard and wear shorts. He had the nerve to ask Cameron if she had started her period because he couldn't start the treatment if she was using a tampon.
I remember how absolutely mortified I was when you asked me if I had started my period yet because you couldn't do the treatment if I had a tampon in.
Cameron has just lost her father, so she asked Larry,
"You molested a little girl who had just lost her father. Was I not suffering enough?"
As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that Larry Nassar's abuse had been reported on multiple occasions, but the system failed the survivors one by one. In 2007, a gymnast talked to her coach about Nassar's abusive methods, but the coach silenced her and told her not to file an official complaint. Another police report was filed in 2004, but Nassar convinced the authorities that he was only doing medical procedures. He even referred to one of his colleagues to support his practices. Dr. Brooke Lemon, a close associate to Larry Nassar, removed files of abused patients from his office during the investigation. Larry told the police officer that Brooke knew about his methods and did not object to them. Dr. Brooke told the police officers that she was very good friends with Larry.
Later, Nassar tells the detective that she should talk to one of his colleagues at MSU, Dr. Brooke Lemon, who he said once cautioned him to be careful.
She said, Larry, I watched you for 8 years. And I said, because I was worried about you getting yourself in trouble with that.
This justification and a few other medical experts allowed Larry to go scot-free in the 2014 investigation. When the FBI investigation into Larry's case began in 2015, it was too late. He had abused 40 patients in the meantime. It shows a complete lapse of duty in the justice system when it comes to the cares of sexual abuse, especially in relation to children. A later investigation into the FBI's proceeding stated that the organization failed to pursue a course of action that would have immediately protected victims in harm's way. 103 victims of Nassar sued the FBI for falsifying statements and delaying action. The suit added up to a total of $1.13 billion under the Federal Tort Claims Act. However, the FBI didn't do anything about the officers who mishandled the evidence and let Nassar have access to innocent children in the meantime. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, apologized in court, saying that he was deeply and profoundly sorry that so many people let you down over and over again. These findings were mentioned in a detailed account of Nassar's heinous crimes in the book, Start by Believing Larry Nassar's Crimes, the Institutions That Enabled Him, and the Brave Women Who Stopped a Monster. In the end, it was not just the disgraced Dr. Larry Nassar, but the USA Gymnastics Administration, the police, and the FBI who let down hundreds of survivors. Many of these children could have been saved from the horrible grasp of Nassar if the authorities had acted in time. As Marisa Kwiatkowski exclaims in the TED Talk, exposing the worst sexual offender in the U.S. sporting history, her investigation was not merely about Nassar, but a probe into the criminal negligence in child assault cases.
One study found that 1 out of every 10 children will be sexually abused before the age of 18. Another found that of children who were abused, 95% knew and trusted the person who hurt them.
How do you take the time to hear the stories of hundreds of women who a single man has abused? You take 7 days and let each one of them tell their story as clearly as day. Larry Nassar's hearing was extended over 7 days to allow 156 girls to make their impact statements. This hearing was a landmark achievement in the Me Too movement. Dr. Larry Nassar felt the full weight of his actions when the testimonies were read out.
Was simply a ploy to molest me every chance you got. I can't even put into words how much I hate you.
I was naked, completely alone, with him on top of me, molesting me for hours. Michaela Maroney testified in court how Nassar brutally assaulted her.
I was naked, completely alone, with him on top of me, molesting me for hours.
During the proceeding, one father could not hold his anger any longer and lunged at Larry Nassar, but the authorities stopped the father from hurting Larry in an open court.
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon.
I have
would
a feeling.
Would you do that?
That is not
yes
how our.
No?
No, sir, I can't.
Would you
do
give me
that.
1 minute?
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system.
Well, I'm gonna have to take
Rachel Denhollander, who was the first survivor to report Larry Nassar's abuse, had the final say in court. She told the court how she had been abused and asked the people about the worth of a little girl's safety. She asked the court, why didn't anyone question his qualifications or his methods?
I was barely 15 when Larry began to abuse me,
And as I lay on the table each time and tried to reconcile what was happening with the man Larry was held out to be, there were 3 things I was very sure of. First, it was clear to me this was something Larry did regularly. Second, because this was something Larry did regularly, it was impossible that at least some women and girls had not described what was going on. And third, I was confident that because people at MSU and USAG had to be aware and had not stopped him, there could surely be no question about the legitimacy of his treatment.
She said that she knew about pelvic exams and how people were trained to do them. What Larry Nassar did was different. He had been penetrating young girls for a long time.
And because I had friends who were physical therapists who actually practiced legitimate internal pelvic floor techniques, I also knew at 15 that to practice this, you must have specialized training and certification. Surely anyone who had heard that Larry was penetrating little girls would have demanded to know where he got his training.
She said that 4 girls had already reported his abuse years before she entered Dr. Larry Nassar's exam room. She was completely horrified by the fact that no one did anything to stop him from abusing little girls.
I did not know that Christy Achenbach had reported the penetration and sexual assault to her track coach and her athletic trainers, and had also been silenced a full year before I walked into Larry's door.
Even after listening to all the testimonies, Larry did not show any remorse for his victims. He said he was being punished for doing a good job.
It's like blindsiding someone, you know what I mean? It's like you're doing this and you're doing it for good to help someone, and they're giving you the positive feedback that you're helping them. How do I know I'm hurting them?
He even wrote a letter to the authorities that he was being falsely blamed for abusing young girls. He insisted in the letter that he was only treating them and that the police were only putting him on trial because they found videos of child pornography in his home. He also accused Judge Rosemary of turning the trial into a circus and said that he couldn't handle 4 days of sitting in the witness box.
Judge Aquilina is seeking media attention over court protocol. Really? I'm doing my job. I try to do it well, unlike what you did.
Judge Rosemary was disgusted by Larry's words and threw out his letter.
Writing this mumbo jumbo doesn't help you, sir.
She said that she didn't want the focus of the media's attention, as all the focus should be on putting Nassar away.
She wants me to sit in the witness box next to her for all 4 days, so the media cameras will be directed toward her. I don't need any cameras. You certainly are free not to take my picture.
After hearing all the victims and adding up the collective sentence, Judge Rosemary sentenced Dr. Larry Nassar to 175 years in prison. She said that Larry did not deserve to walk out of prison because everywhere he went, destruction would follow.
Are you guilty, sir?
I said my plea, exactly.
It is my honor and privilege to sentence you because, sir, you do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again. I have many defendants come back here and show me the great things they've done in their lives after probation, after parole. I don't find that's possible with you. Sir, I'm giving you 175 years, which is 2,100 months. I just signed your death warrant.
The cold-blooded Nassar got exactly what he deserved. He was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison and sent to United States Penitentiary Coleman in Florida. It goes without saying that his inmates were not fans, and he had a hard time adjusting to prison life. The man whom people treated like a friend was now an enemy in everyone's eyes. They say karma is a bitch. Nassar was met with anger and disgust when he entered the gates of the federal prison in Oklahoma. He was taken by surprise by one of his inmates, just like his victims were. The inmate did not take mercy on Nassar and stabbed him 10 times.
One of the most notorious convicted abusers in American history, viciously attacked in prison. Larry Nassar, former team doctor for USA Gymnastics, was stabbed 10 times, including multiple times in the neck and chest Sunday during an altercation with a fellow inmate at the Coleman Federal Penitentiary in Sumterville, Florida.
Keith Taylor, the former assistant commissioner of New York Department of Corrections, said that prisoners who are put in jail for sex crimes receive the most hate. So it's nothing new.
Inmates who have committed sex crimes, rapes, child molestation,
they are usually targeted by other inmates.
The irony of the situation is that Nassar had thought that he would get away with everything he did, but he never perceived that he would be attacked as mercilessly as he did the young girls under his medical care. Dr. Larry Nassar did not act alone when he molested hundreds of girls. He was protected by colleagues. The administration at USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University didn't do anything about the abuse allegations against Larry Nassar. When Marisa Kwiatkowski went to look for the files, she got a huge bundle, but not the files that would incriminate Larry Nassar for good. It turns out that USA Gymnastics had a policy of not reporting abuse if certain criteria were not met. The coaches at USA Gymnastics and the FBI officers who lied about Michaela's testimony are all equally responsible for letting Larry get away for so long. They were more concerned about saving their reputation until at least 500 girls had been abused and traumatized by the so-called doctor. When Larry was lying in the hospital bed after being stabbed 10 times, he likely felt pain like the pain he inflicted on his victims. Or maybe he still feels that he was doing the right thing. The one thing that we have learned from Larry Nassar's case is that it is necessary to speak up. It's necessary for authorities to hold an abuser accountable before it's too late. Thank you for watching until the end. Do you think Larry got what he deserved when he got stabbed in prison? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe.